In John 15:7, we get a good look at the issue of the middle. Eon meneta en emoi, kai ta heremata mu en humin mene, ha eon theleta etesaste, kai genesetai humin. Starting with the third class condition, if meneta, subjunctive, right? If you remain in me, and the words of me, my words, remain in you all, then whatever you wish, and what's this? Well, it's from aiteo, isn't it? So you have the root there, you have the lengthened vowel, and then you have the sigma alpha and the ending, which makes this a aorist middle imperative. You can check morphology book if you need to see it more clearly. So here we have a middle imperative, and it's an aorist middle imperative, which is why we can tell for sure that it is a middle and not a passive. We're going to come back and look at this. And it will be to you all. And you have to translate into English, and the idea is it'll be done for you all. Okay, a couple of things worth looking at here. First of all, what's this humin? Well, this is one of those datives that we call either a dative of advantage or a dative of disadvantage. And that's contextually decided. If it's a good thing, we call it a dative of advantage. If it's a bad thing, we call it a dative of disadvantage. No difference in form, it's just context. Dative of advantages are pretty easy to translate. You generally will just put word for into it. It'll be done for you. If it's a dative of disadvantage, then you have to look at the context, and it'll be done against you or something along those lines. So this is that use of the dative, either of advantage or disadvantage. And by the way, what is this? Remember when you have a gamma and a vowel and a single nu? What is it? It's ginomai, right? You learn the root as gen. So this is a future middle that has the same basic meaning in the middle as it does in the active, and it will happen for you. Now let's take a look at this, because I think it's an interesting situation. And by the way, you'll notice that it's done for you, for you, for you, standard translation of the dative of advantage. But here you have an aorist middle of aiteo. And if you look it up in Bauer, notice what it says. Okay, it says to ask for with a claim on a receipt of an answer, to ask for, demand. And then it says between active and middle, the distinction between active, ask outright, and the middle, ask as alone, found in ancient grammar, says only very limited validity in our literature. In other words, this is one of those examples where some of the more nice, neat distinctions in classical Greek fall away. And they're just saying it basically is the same meaning. I think with the new work that's being done on the middle, to put kind of bluntly, aiteo in the active is to ask someone. Aiteo in the middle places more emphasis upon the subject, and it's the idea of asking for yourself. Now, I wouldn't translate it that way, but that's the nuance of the middle if you're going to disagree with the dictionary, which is okay to do from time to time. And by the way, I forgot to point out, meneta, what tense is that? Well, it's an aorist, isn't it? Remember, the stem in the present is men, mu, epsilon, nu. You get the iota when you go into the aorist. So, and you know it's a subjunctive because it's following aeon. So meneta is an aorist active subjunctive. So if you remain, third class condition, in me and my words remain in you, then ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. So if we can get back to phrasing, it's if you remain in me And I think this is kind of an important distinction because there's two qualifications. My words remain in you, then whatever you wish, then here's your main verb, right? The imperative, ask, and as a result, it will be for you. But we want to emphasize that etesesta is the main thought in the sentence. So we're going to go up to the if clause and we're going to indent that. This kai is important because, like, you could almost do it this way. So you have two ifs. If you remain in me and if my words remain in you, then the question is, what is the function of haeantheleta? Well, it's the direct object of the imperative, isn't it? It's what's being asked. So I'm going to pull that in, at least put it like that. So you ask whatever you wish, and then the conclusion of that is it'll be done for you. So you have this nice structure. If you remain in me, and if my words remain in you, then ask what? Well, ask whatever you wish, and it'll be done for you. Now, the interesting thing in this verse, of course, is Jesus telling the truth? I mean, let's be blunt. Jesus is making a bold-faced promise that if we remain in him and his words remain in us, then we can ask for whatever we want, and it will be to us. And this is where the boldness in our prayer life comes from. This is where the boldness of coming before the throne of grace to our Heavenly Father. The caveat in these verses, of course, is if you are truly remaining in him and his words are truly remaining in us, it will be affecting what we ask for. And I know so often we don't get things the way we want or when we want, and we tend to run away from this promise. And we will emphasize perhaps, well, I must not be remaining in him. His words must not be remaining in me. I mean, there must be something wrong. And prayer needs to change me. And certainly prayer does change us. But those caveats aside, this is quite a promise. I'd talk about it in class, how you think about that. But whatever you do, please don't water it down. Don't realize there are other verses, in accordance with my will and things like that. But don't water down these kinds of verses. Jesus is making an amazing promise to his children. It has to mean something. And actually, I can go even one step further, and that is, let's talk about word order. Why on earth does Jesus put the direct object before the verb? Well, you should know by now that you can do a lot of things with Greek word order, and usually the motivation behind something being in an unusual place is one of emphasis. And that certainly is the case here. He could have said, ask whatever you wish, but in order to be emphatic, he's saying, whatever you wish, ask. So again, these words have to mean something. It's a bold promise. What do they mean?